Okay, so now let's start with the macro programming. How we can use how we can write the macro programming in the real time and how it will be useful. Okay, so in yesterday yesterday we discussed like a macro. Whenever you're creating in a macro, it's nothing but reuse the existing code, reuse the same code multiple times. To reuse that, we can give the some name to the particular macro text, like creating the packages, and each package we can give some name. So that particular package you're going to create within the macro, and we are giving the name of the macro. And once we give the name, and we are whenever you want it, you can call that macro with the passing the parameters. Like so, the first step is basic. A macro generally consists of macro and amend statement. It means whenever creating a package or whenever creating the macro, you have to start with the percentage macro and you have to end with the percentage end. Between these two, whatever you have written, that will be considered as a macro. And that particular we are giving some name, like see percentage macro and giving the name of the macro and text, whatever the text that you are going to write, text, Sas code, anything, and macro amend. Okay, so so this is how the macro will be consist of. Any macro, it will start with the percentage macro and will end with the percentage amend. And after the percentage macro, give the name of the macro. You have to give the name, macro name mandatory. And here, it's it's not required to give the macro name at the end amend, but if you give, that's good. So what exactly the macro text? So the macro begin of the macro execution, assign the name of the macro, and the macro text can be anything, either a data step or proc step or normal simple statement or any value, any constant, anything will be considered as a macro text. Any text, SAS statements or steps and macro variable functions or statement, everything will be considered as a text. So whatever you have written between that macro and you give it some name, whenever you are calling that name of the macro, then whatever you have written the text, it will be executed or it will replace it. If you are giving some like creating the macro variable in that statement, that macro variable will be shown in the wherever you are executing. So once you define that, use the amend statement. So it means the particular macro is completed writing the macro. So once you create the macro, this is only the just creating the package, but you are not executing the package or not executing that macro. To execute the macro, you have to call that. How you can call it? By using the percentage, whatever the name that you have given. So calling a macro. So after macro compiles successfully, it is executed successfully with the macro call. How you can call it? Whatever the name that you have given, name of that particular macro, I put the percentage. Whenever you put the percentage and call the macro name, automatically that particular macro will be executed wherever you want it. Okay, so a macro can be can be made anywhere in the program. Means you can call anywhere in the program. Okay, so you can create a macro one time and compile the macro. If no issues in the compilation, then you are good. And you can call that particular macro wherever you want it. So like n number of times you can call it. But compilation is only one time. So that's the reason that's what we are saying. Like creating the package or creating some context, some text, and giving some name of the macro, and that code can be used n number of times. How we are going to by calling the macro macro name. So any questions here? We'll go to some examples. Okay. Now, once you create the macro, now there are some options. These options will majorly useful to debug the macro. Like suppose you are executing a macro, you thought everything is done, but it's you're getting the as per the results you are not getting. It means something is not correct. So how you can going to debug? Use these macro options like mprint, mlogic, symbols, like this, like merror. Whenever you say mprint means macro print. Whatever the macro that you are doing, it's printing. Whatever the logic that you are doing, its logic is printing in the log file. If any errors are there in the macro errors, that will show in the macro error. Okay, so like that you can use these options to debug the, especially using if any particular thing is not correct. So to debug those parameters, these options will be useful. See, the mprint option writes the SAS log of each SAS statement generated by SAS macro. Because when what happening is whenever you are crossing the parameter, the macro will be resolved, or those parameters will be resolved and substituted in the macro, and will show you that in the log when you use an mprint. So that can be helpful where suppose how the what values are resolving in the parameters. So out of all these things, this particular option is very useful. How it will be useful means how the particular macro variable, because you are creating a macro variable and using those macro variable, right? To see those macro variable, it's how the value, what value is resolving, those things that you can see in the log. I'll take some examples now, we'll see that. So now the next part is parameters, macro parameters. So yesterday we discussed about the percentage, late percentage, local percentage. Those are the macro variables. Those are the macro parameters. But they directly we are creating. How you are going to use those macro variables or macro parameters into this macro program? Okay. So I'll take because there are two type of parameters here. One is position parameters. One is keyword parameters. So the whenever you say position means based on the position that you define in the macro after the macro name, the value will be resolved in your program, in the macro text based on the position. The next one is keyword. Whatever the keyword that you have used as a macro variable, that based on the keyword, the variable will be executed. So let's go to some example, then we'll get the clear idea on that. So okay, let's take the new data set. So this is my data set. Okay, now I'm going to create the macro. What I'm printing the data. Okay, that if I pass the age, I want to print only that particular data set, that particular age in that age people in the class. So percentage macro class 2, just giving that. What I'm doing is proc print data equal to class. Okay, here age equal to 10. So okay, suppose if I run like this, you will see that particular age 13 data. But similarly, I want to run, I want to see the data for age 14 also. Then again, you have to run the, suppose, so this age 13. So if I want to see age 14, change 14 and run it. Similarly, if I to see the age 15, I have to change this to 15 and run it. Right? So similarly, if I want to age 12, then I have to change it and run it. So like this, you have to run whatever the age that you have. Every time you have to change it and create a separately like this. Instead of doing all these things, I don't want to write all these number of things at a time. I'm going to delete this, and whatever here it's changing only this particular age. This value I'm going to pass as a parameter. First, let's take the parameter at the variable level here. Age equal to 12. Then whatever the variable that you specified, age equal to that, and give the ampersand age dot. So what it will do is whatever the value that you are passing, that will directly goes here, and it will run the report. See age 12, we got the output. Right now, if I want to run other age, I don't need to execute all the things. Just only call this particular macro. Now, what age you want it? 13, 14, 15, 16, 11. Now you don't need to run this particular macro now. You just run this line only, this particular macro. It will call it. If I run like this, it will give the 14, 15, 16, like this. So it means I am not running this macro every time. So this particular macro you have to execute only one time. So once your execution is completed, then you can pass the parameter run a number of times. So this is how in real time how it will work. Because create this particular macro, somebody is created somewhere. Whenever you call it and you just pass the parameter, automatically that particular macro will be executed. But first time you have to execute. So this, because this is the first time, whenever you are open the SAS session, whenever you are using this, you have to execute this program first. And wherever you want it, you can just use this particular macro name and pass the parameter, automatically it will execute it. So is this clear? So it's not only proc print is required. So you can write any statement, either you can write the data step, proc step, or whatever the procedure you want it. Okay, so this is how the macros will work. And here see this age. So directly you are passing the parameter, right? So this age, like you are creating by using the percentage let statement yesterday. So instead of specifying the directly value, so somewhere you can specify the value, and that value will be need to be passed here. So this is a macro parameters we call as. Okay. Yeah. So now let's see this particular age equal we call as a parameter. Age is nothing but it's a macro parameter or macro variable. Here we call as a parameter. When it goes to here, it's variable. Okay. Now, so these parameters are two types, like position parameters and keyword parameters. So how, like in this particular parameter we called as keyword parameters, means whatever the keyword that you are entering, that means you are entering here. Suppose if you don't specify a here, so for keyword parameters, what you can do is like this. You can do that. For position parameters, just enter the value 12 here, and that value will be goes here age, and run it. See, it's not specified anything, but see, now let's go to the other variable. See, I'm just creating some mail data I want to create it. Now I'm just, since the parameters has changed, but it's good now. Let's run this. You can see 12 and M only. Now, if I change the order here, instead of age 6, age, you won't get the output. See, you are getting error message here. Why means the sex parameter, it's need only the character value, but you are passing the number. So this we call as a position parameter. So whatever the value that you are passing, that value must be matched here. If you're not, if the position changes, the complete report will be failed. Means the order of the variable that you're passing must be matched with the type of the data. So instead of this, suppose if I specify age equal to 6 equal to like this, then you can see. So irrespective of what position it has, but you're just directly passing the values, directly you're assigning the values and giving the values and just executing that. It means this is called as keyword parameters. Any questions here? Okay, so this is how the macros parameters, the definition with the position parameters, keyword parameters, so that we are discussing here. So position parameters, keyword parameters. So you can use the mixed parameters, but it's very careful whenever you're defining. So this is about the rules, how you're just going to pass for the parameters. So the position parameters are substituted for the parameter variables using the one-to-one correspondence. Okay, so it's simple one. So here these are examples here. Keep parameter, position parameter, keyword parameter examples. Okay, now the next one is if then else condition. So you can also use the if then else condition in a SAS in macros also. but what is the difference between there and here? So whenever you are going the if then else condition, you have to use a percentage for each and every word that you used. If, then, else, do, and those kind of things. If you don't use it, that will not consider as a macro. If you use it, that will consider a macro. But if you want to use this condition outside it without percentage, you have to use it. So the if then else do and constructs are available only in a macro scope. Unlike the percentage experiment, these constructs cannot be used outside a macro in the open code. So it means this if then else statement must be used within the macro. What is within the macro? Whenever you say within the macro means between this M macro and MN. Here only in between these only you have to use do and if then else do and all the things. If you use outside the macro, if you put the percentage, it won't work that. You have to use without percentage. So similarly, do loop. Okay, so percentage do macro variable value and stored by this one. So this is a loop condition. These are the syntaxes for that. How it will be used, just see. So there is a one of the major function in that we can use, percentage eval. So whenever you say percentage eval, it means it's evaluated those value. Eval means evaluated. Evaluated means it will be if you are doing any calculations, arithmetic operation, any logical operation that you are going to do between the two values, that value will evaluated. If you don't use this function, whatever the value that you have, it will be considered as a text only. Even if you do the 2 plus 3 or x, 10 greater than 5 or 5 greater than 5 less than 10, all the things conditions. It will, if we don't use this, it will automatically value is there, it will be displayed as this. But if you use evaluated, percentage eval, whatever the logic is there, it will be, the meaning will be evaluated. Or it will give you will get the meaning of the particular condition. That you will get the result. Let's see this. So percentage put value 10 less than 2. Right? It's 0. It means false. 10 is less than or less than 2. It's false 0. 10 plus 2. So it means whenever you use it, 10 plus 2, you got 12. So count 2 plus 1, 3. But if you don't use this evaluation, it automatically 2 plus 1 only. You can see output. This one. So this is how it will be used arithmetical logic table to evaluate those one. You use a percentage eval function. So these are order for arithmetical logical operators in SAS. So yesterday we discussed about the percentage let statement. So the percentage let statement majorly used to define the macro variable, and the percentage put here we're calling put means you're writing that, it means macro variable resolution value. Whenever you say percentage put, it means whatever the macro variable that you are using, and that value will be resolved whenever you use a percentage put, and will show you the original value. After resolving the macro variable, you will get the see the value. So that to display your own message in the SAS log, use the percentage put. So it writes the SAS log only, always writes in a new log in the line column 1. Write a blank line if the text is not specified, do not require. So these are some things like that. Now the important part here. Now let's see this. Let's go to the example here. So here we see that macro variables, right? This age value 12 and 13. So directly you're defining the value you're getting. But this value I want to take from the data set. Like I want to create a macro variable. Like I want to calculate the maximum age, and whatever the result that you are getting, that value I want to store in a particular variable, and that variable I have to use it, and that value need to be passed to this particular data set. So I don't want to see like this. I don't want to pass any parameters. Okay. Now I want to generate the report, like from all the people whose maximum age is in a class. How many people are like you can calculate the number of people, and I want to see all those list of people whose maximum age in the class. So first thing is how you are going to calculate the maximum age. So this will give the maximum age, right? So maximum age is 16. I want to create the report only this particular age. Okay. Now my intention, I want to store this value in a particular macro variable. So how you can create it? By using the into class. Age. When you run like this, see, So what exactly we did? We're not asking to run at a particular age. We're asking to run the create the report. The, whose maximum age is what? How many people are there? I want to see those list of people. So this we called as a creating the macro variable by using the SQL proc SQL. So this we call as into class. So that's what yesterday we also see that in one of the PDF, right? So like in a SQL, how you are going to create the macro variable. So this is a way how by using the into class you can create the macro variable. It's not like because this is a dynamical you are creating the reports. You are not passing any parameters, right? You're not passing any parameter, but just directly creating the report with the maximum age. Similarly, you can do any this type of calculation. You can do that, like maximum salary, who's getting the maximum salary, all those things like that. Okay, so this is how just use the creating the macro variable by using the into class. This is creating the macro variable from the SAS from the SQL. So here the calls input is another method that you creating the macro variable. We are going to create means I'm not using this one. I created the dataset called age. It has the information only maximum age. Now I'll use this dataset and create the variable. Use the call sim put. I want to create age. Age. What is the value here? Which variable? I want to create age. What is the dataset that you're creating? What because this is the SAS variable name, so this is a macro variable name. So what is the variable that you are going to use? I'm using the dataset called age here. Now what I'm doing, I'm creating the maximum age, created the data set. From the data set, I'm creating the age, taking the age variable, creating the age macro. Now I'm running. Something is not correct. Now you see you don't see any data here. You got the 0. Okay. Because it's created the variable called A, not age. See? Because here we are renamed as a variable as A. So the output that you're getting, that variable creating as A. That variable you can see. Now you're on that, you got the report. So this is how that you will see in the real time by using the calls input proc in SQL into. So two different methods we just discussed how creating the macro variable, like by using the calls input into class. So the first question you'll ask, how many ways you can create the macro variables? So you have to ask the answer, right? There are 5 different methods. The first method is proc SQL into class, and the second method is calls input in the data step, and the third is a percentage let statement, and the fourth is percentage local, and fifth is percentage global. So these are the 5 different methods that you can create a macro variable. Okay. Yeah, you can see here. So with the one variable, now you can create a more than one variable also by using the into class. Column 1, column 2 into m variable 1, m variable 2, comma from the table where other classes. So if you are going to create a more than two variables, like maximum age, minimum age. So what you want to repeat? Okay. The first method is by using calls input, that we call as a, just now we see this calls input. This is a calls input. And the second method is proc equal into class. So this we call as into class. And the third one is percentage let statement. Yesterday we used percentage let x equal 10. That is also one way to create a macro variable. And the next one is percentage local and percentage global. So yesterday we saw that percentage local means the variable will be used within the macro. So that is also one way to create the macro variable. And the last method is percentage global. So here this is a whole, because in previously we see only one particular maximum is, then you can create only one variable, but you can create a more than one variable, one macro variable, like two macro variables, three like this. But you can define like this, okay? And you can create n number, creating the variables into class. And this one is also sometime important. Like, so I have different ages. There are 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 6 different ages people are there in my class. I want to see all these ages, create a one macro variable, and each value is separated by comma. Let's see. Now this is my age. So instead, because when you say maximum age, you will see only one age. But I want to see all the people whose all the different ages. This thing ages as into creating a macro variable into a, and all the different ages that need to be separated by comma, like this. You can see all the list. And now by using the percentage put statement, I'm going to see this value of the a. See, what are the different values that you have? All values are separated by comma and created the macro variable. So this is how we can use the into class with the multiple values that you want to keep separate in different variables. Yeah, the next one is the percentage include. So this is also sometimes important. The exact meaning of percentage, the exact use of the percentage is include. Simple one. So you have 5 different programs, right? So you have created around 5 different programs, like program 1, program 2, program 3, program 4, program 5. I want to run all the, like now to create the report, you need to execute all the 5 different reports one after other. Okay. I want to create the report, five different reports one after other. So what you will do, you will run the first one, and you will, after completing the one, second one you have to run it, and after completing the second you have to run third, and after third and you have to fourth, like one by one you will execute it. But that will take that because you have to wait all the 5 programs, you have to run one by one, you have to wait it. Instead of that, by using the percentage include statement, all these 5 programs you can put it in one single program and run only that particular single program. What it will do is it will run one after other automatically. But how you are going to use? By using the percentage include first program name, percentage include second program name, percentage include third program name, percentage include fourth, percentage include fifth. When you put all these 5 lines in the one single program, then you run only that particular program. Automatically, one after other, these will be executed. Okay. So that's the overall meaning of the percentage include. Percentage include nothing but if you want to use some other program and you want to execute it here, then you can use the percentage include. Is that clear? Yeah. So, and there are some other names called percentage file name. They include this here also. The source file name. It's not only the just thing that, but other than this, nothing here. Yeah. So this is about the macros. So these are all the SaaS course. Like, and I can give you some examples, like some material on these particular trainings, and I'll give you some interview questions I can show you right now. So any questions on all these classes, if you have any, let me know. Okay, we can discuss it. Yeah, I can have some interview questions that also. So these are some SQL questions. They will ask the question, write an SQL query to show the second highest salary from a table. How you get it? Okay, I'll show you. I'll send these queries also how you can do that. There are, so they will ask the question. Sometimes you may need to answer right. So you might have to write it this one. And there is a question that is answer. So these are scenario based question. Yeah, I will do that right away now. So and similarly, we do have some interview questions also that also I'll forward that. Not here. So I have some in one in drive location. I can share that one. I'll do that. Yeah. So SAS interview question general under the what circumstances would you use to select like this? Okay. And also we have SAS clinical interview question, some context, some procedure level interview question crafts. Okay. I'll send all these documents. So just go through, prepare all these things and yes, I think they'll you market your engineering position only. They'll so they have some already some resumes. If they don't have it, they'll ask me. They will ask my from me. I'll share all the resumes and you can get it also. If they don't share it, I can send those resumes to you. Maybe directly they will forward that to you. So it's not like a like whatever the material that I have, everything will be shared with you. So you can go ahead and do that and along with the recordings. I'll share right now with along with the material, then you'll get it. Okay, mostly along with these recordings, you'll also get these interview questions and the scenario based things. Those two you'll also and also like this macro PDF and the SQL PPT. All those things you'll get it in by today or tomorrow. So it's not like if you are going to industrial, it's not based on the industrial level. It's a technical like whatever the things you learn it. Though they will ask those type of questions. How how this will be used? Like what are the what like it doesn't matter like if industry or clinical or normally like because how that particular because even the industry also like you have some data and reports required. Those how you are going to create that kind of report? What are the different SaaS techs that you will use? Those type of things you have to ask. Okay. Yeah. So I'll send all these things, and if you have any questions, just so you can email me anytime. I can respond to your questions and things. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, and I'll share this material, and I can all the best for you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. You can just send an email anytime, anything you wanted. So I'll respond to that email. Thank you. Bye.